Take your mask off. No. Put the rock down, man. Put the rock down.
Over the last decade, there has been increasing public opposition to trade agreements that exclude civil society in the negotiations. Protests at trade summits have drawn citizens from all sectors of society, but have been met with an overwhelming police response. Trade is fundamental to human interaction, bringing people and cultures together. Trade can also be extremely negative, bringing exploitation, domination, slavery, and causing famine, poverty, environmental destruction, and war. On August 20th, 2007, at the protest against the Security Prosperity Partnership Leaders Summit in Montebello, Quebec, 3 police officers dressed as radical protesters with rocks in their hands were confronted by legitimate protesters and accused of trying to incite a riot.
Go on, it's our line! It's a peaceful demonstration!
Would the government prefer a violent confrontation between protesters and police in order to discredit the protesters and ignore their message? What is the government trying to hide?
I'm amused by the difference between what actually takes place in the meetings and what some were trying to say takes place.
The rules for jelly bean contents are different in Canada and the United States. They have to maintain 2 separate inventories. Is the sovereignty of Canada going to fall apart if we standardize the jelly bean?
Like democracy and freedom, the price of fair and ethical trade is eternal vigilance. Beware, because when leaders make trade deals in secret and only consult with the wealthiest in society, the price of trade could be democracy and freedom.
The SPP is profoundly anti-democratic. The North American Competitiveness Council, made up of the CEOs from 30 major corporations, including Walmart, General Electric, Merck, and Lockheed Martin, co-governs with the 3 heads of states and drafted all of the SPP's 300 initiatives. No other sector in our society has been consulted on the SPP, and elected representatives in all 3 countries have been frozen out of the process.
It disturbs us that democracy is actually being stolen away from us under this guise of this corporate, competitive global agenda.
We know that it is gradually bringing Canada into line with a weaker approach to civil liberties in the United States today.
Citizens, we're going to be prisoners in Fortress America.
When it comes to the security side, people are being asked to conform to much more intrusive level of regulation by the state.
The no-fly list, that's part of the integration.
Every single traveler that crosses the border between Canada and the United States is being given a code, either a green, an orange, or a red code. That's been determined by the level of what they call the risk assessment. And these would be the business travelers that would be assigned the green light, and they can just, carry on, go through the border with minimal intrusion into their lives.
The citizens are going to be required to carry a driver's license with all the biometric identifiers on it.
My husband was detained 43 months without charge or access to the evidence because the government thought he was a terrorist in the past, present, or in the future.
Criminalization of dissent is already here under the anti-terrorism laws.
The SPP sets the stage for a common continental foreign policy because it assumes a common approach to external threats.
The ultimate goal, quite obviously, is to create such tight integration that effectively we only have one North American political, security, military, and economic place, that there really are no differentials between this country and the country next door.
The SPP is a dumbing down, a reducing of quality of life, a reducing of standards, and there is absolutely no indication in any of the documents we've been able to obtain through hard pushing through the access to information, not a single indication that we're looking for a higher standard anywhere.
Canada has just agreed to lower its levels of pesticide regulations to match that of the United States.
They want to lower standards, probably to those of Mexico, in order to make an argument that they need those standards to compete with the rest of the world. And we will continue to lose pace in terms of our standard of living in this country and in the United States, and I would suggest also even in Mexico.
In all cases, it's something that will have a negative, not a positive impact on the lives of the vast majority of Canadians.
The SPP will help reintroduce the defeated multilateral agreement on investment back into North America through TILMA, the Trade, Investment and Labour Mobility Agreement, already in place between Alberta and British Columbia.
The real importance of TILMA was that it was a way of getting Canada's own house in order to facilitate greater integration with the United States. And what TILMA does is it creates unprecedented power for private interests to challenge public policy, which is formulated in a democratic way. Its enforcement mechanism is very aggressive. It allows individuals and businesses to sue provincial governments for up to $5 million over a wide range of laws, policies, and regulations, including those maintained by municipalities and school boards.
Stupidly, we have got into this agreement in NAFTA, which says that we must export almost two-thirds of our oil and over half of our natural gas. And even if we have a shortage, we've still got to export that same proportion. Meanwhile, Canada has no security plan for Canadians, and the United States has a national energy policy, not a North American one. And it talks about American energy independence, American self-sufficiency, and American ownership of its oil industry. Mexico has a national energy policy. They say Mexicans must control their own oil. Canada is the only country of the three NAFTA countries that doesn't have a national policy of any sort. And here we are, the coldest country. Who needs an energy security policy the most? It's Canadians.
There's not a single pipeline that can deliver oil from Alberta to Eastern Canada. It must go through Chicago. So we've got a national energy security issue here.
In the document, they talk about North American water, and it is as clear as can be that the United States has begun to see not only water as a national security issue, but Canada's water as part of its national security answer.
The STPP promotes the fast-tracking of cheap imports from Asia, set to grow exponentially in the coming decade through the expansion of superports, particularly Halifax and Vancouver, and trade corridors, including a NAFTA superhighway that will include multi-lane highways, railway lines, electrical grids, energy and perhaps water pipelines, and liquid natural gas terminals, all to facilitate this explosion in imports.
They're taking the resources of Canada, in particular Canada, and Mexico, and creating a fortress U.S.
What the Security and Prosperity Partnership is saying is, these are North American resources. These are not Canadian resources. Stop thinking Canadian.
What they want here is to get rid of barriers. Turns out the barriers are the rules that protect wages for workers. Turns out they're the rules that protect the environment. Turns out they're the rules that make sure that we have the highest standard possible for the people who take care of other people, such as doctors and lawyers.
Jobs now in manufacturing that we're losing at $22 an hour with benefits are being replaced with jobs at $12 an hour with no benefits. We're actually creating an underclass in our society, again, by design and cooperation from the people we elected to look after our interests.
The SPP will encourage regional integration and free trade zones like Cascadia and Atlantica. As East-West links are broken and economic and security considerations move to the fore, the links that bind us as a people will weaken, as will the social contract that we have made to one another.
Here we have Canadian military leaders actually proposing, recommending that the Canadian and U.S. governments take an incremental approach to an integration so as not to signal to ordinary Canadians that their sovereignty was gradually being given away.
Canada is at a critical point in time. We need to stop these undemocratic processes now. We want more transparency in government, reform and strengthening of our democratic system, trade and international agreements that place human rights and the environment above all other considerations, a corporate responsibility charter based on the precautionary principle, and expanded public access media systems. Get involved. Join us. Help us fight this undemocratic process.